Hello and welcome to LFC Focus, a slightly new setup you may notice today. If anyone's wondering why that is, I'm currently up in Liverpool doing a few bits and bobs with the Red Men TV, so a warm welcome as well to any of you who've just subscribed to the channel coming off of there, and if any of you for whatever mad reason aren't already subscribed to the Red Men TV, then don't forget to do that as well. I'll pop a link down in the description below and I'll pop a button in at the end of the video as well if you want that to make it easy for you. But yeah, if anyone was wondering why there's a Garfield duvet there or whatever, then there's your reason. So today I'm carrying on the little mini series that I started off on Saturday of my summer transfer wish list. So the kind of players that I think Liverpool need to be bringing in this summer transfer window. And with midfielders today, the logical progression from doing defenders on Saturday, the first player that I think Liverpool really need to be bringing in midfield is a dynamic, and that word is very key, box-to-box midfielder. Because at the moment, Liverpool don't really have any player who fits this kind of mould. We've got sort of box-to-box players like Emre Can and Gini Wijnaldum, players who don't mind pulling their weight defensively, but also contribute to the attack as well. But this is why the word dynamic is important, because I don't think Liverpool really have a Steven Gerrard type of player who's capable of getting up and down the pitch at lightning speed and fulfilling both of those roles to the extent that we kind of need a player to do so. And the reason that I think we need a player like this is mainly because if we're bringing Coutinho into the midfield, which is what we started doing last season, we saw him drop a little bit deeper and play that number 8 role, which might obviously happen if we're trying to fit Salah, Mane and Firmino into the team as well, then I think Liverpool are going to need a player in midfield who's able to pull his weight defensively a little bit more, because Coutinho will probably slot into that Lallana role where it's a midfielder that, while they are in the midfield 3, effectively forms part of a front 4. And while Lallana was still a natural midfielder, so he was capable of fulfilling those defensive requirements, I don't think Coutinho should really be doing that. I personally don't want to see him slogging it out in midfield and getting the tackles in and trying to defend. I want to see him contributing mainly to the attack. So I think if Coutinho's doing that, then the other two players in the midfield need to be able to defend a little bit more. But obviously the thing we want to avoid there is if we have two defensive midfielders in the midfield, we don't want that to impact the attack either, because the beauty of Liverpool's team last season was the fact that we basically had six players on the pitch who were all capable of joining the attack and getting goals at the same time. We had the front 3 and the midfield 3 were all contributing to the attack and pulling their weight in that regard as well. So I would like us to make sure that while we have a bit more of a defensive edge to the players we have in midfield, we don't lose any of that attacking side either. Now you've probably guessed exactly what player I'm talking about at the moment, but the ideal player that I think would suit this role for Liverpool is of course Naby Keita. And when I'm talking about this, you can start to see why Liverpool are just throwing so much money and so much effort into signing the player, because when you stop and think about it, it's hard to think of any other players in the world right now, certainly not any that are available on the transfer market at the moment, who really fulfill this role. And then you can start to see why Liverpool are going after Naby Keita. I mean, the closest substitute really is probably someone a bit like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who the club are of course apparently targeting. Oxlade-Chamberlain is a bit of a utility player. He can play that attacking role in midfield, but he also doesn't mind hanging out in the engine room as well. But the problem with him, and the problem with a lot of other midfielders in the world, is that Oxlade-Chamberlain is only one man. And the beauty of Naby Keita is that he is effectively like having two players on the pitch, because not only is he a good defensive midfielder and a good attacking midfielder, he's also lightning quick on the ball as well. He is capable of darting up the pitch at the speed of Steven Gerrard when he was younger, which I suppose is why a lot of people want him to get the number 8 shirt and the armband as well. But that is why Naby Keita is so important to Liverpool. He, in that regard, is like N'Golo Kante. I don't want to jump on this bandwagon of saying that Naby Keita is basically N'Golo Kante, because I don't think that's necessarily right. He is a lot more attacking than N'Golo Kante is, but in that respect of being like having two players for the price of one, he is like N'Golo Kante. I mean, just for a bit of context as well on what Naby Keita is capable of, because I don't want to just not back up what I'm saying with any sources whatsoever. He played at Red Bull Salzburg for 2 years before he joined RB Leipzig, and in his first year there, everyone said that Naby Keita was the best defensive midfielder in Austria, and in his second season there, everyone said that Naby Keita was the best attacking midfielder in Austria. So that gives you an idea of just how versatile the player is and exactly why Liverpool are going in for him so strongly. So next up, obviously Naby Keita is the prime target and the player that I want to see Liverpool sign the most. But I think especially with Lucas departing at the moment, that sad news obviously broke today. Very disappointed about that. Let me know if you are as well. I know some people aren't massive fans of Lucas. Some people actually absolutely love him. I fall into that second category. I think he's been a great servant to the club and is actually a much better player than a lot of people give him credit for. But the problem now with Lucas leaving is when you look at our squad, Liverpool don't actually have any out-and-out defensive midfielders. I mean, the closest players we have are Emre Can, who, I mean, he doesn't mind pulling his weight defensively, but he still likes to get forward, and he's not necessarily a defensive midfielder in the style of Lucas, someone who goes about their business quietly, doesn't really get noticed that much, but still serves a lot of a purpose in terms of breaking up attacks, getting tackles in, and helping out the back four as well. And then the other players that we've got there, Kev Stewart, who, yeah, he's a defensive midfielder. He's an all right footballer, but do I want to see him starting games in the Champions League for Liverpool? Please God, no. I want to see a better player than that starting in defensive midfield for Liverpool. And this is what it comes down to, really, is Champions League matches and Premier League games, because Liverpool's big problem last season was their defence, and I think it's going to come to a point where they're going to realise, especially if they don't sign a player like Van Dijk at centre-back, they're going to need to have someone in the midfield pulling their weight a little bit more, sitting in front of that back foot and helping them out a little bit, because we're obviously going to have a lot of big Premier League matches next season, especially if we are pushing for the title, and in the Champions League as well. If we're coming up against Real Madrid or Barcelona, at the end of the day, we're just going to have to accept that we are a very good attacking side, but so are they. And so we're going to need to put a little bit of effort into making our defence work for these games. I mean, you look at the season before last in the Europa League, one of Liverpool's best games was actually Borussia Dortmund away, where they said, look, Dortmund are a good side and we're going to need to set up shop for a little bit, shut up shop and try and just park the bus a little bit defensively. And that worked. So I think Liverpool need to bring in a kind of player who's able to help serve this purpose and just say to the 5 players in front of them, the 2 midfielders and the 3 forwards, you know, go and do what you want, go and attack, be free, enjoy yourselves, and I will help cover at the back. So in terms of the style of player that we're looking for to fulfill this role, I think Sergio Busquets is the style of player we're looking for. I'm not saying sign Sergio Busquets because I don't think he's actually available in the transfer market at the moment, and I certainly don't think Liverpool will be able to put forward the kind of fee that we need to bring him in. But we need someone who's just capable of that. They're smart, they're calm, they've got a lot of experience as well, and they just go about their business quietly. You know, Sergio Busquets is a sort of Lucas-like figure at Barcelona, where for many years, no one really knew what he did. No one really saw him as an important cog in the team. But it gradually became apparent that he was actually very important, and he did what I was saying earlier we need a player to do, to simply sit at the back of that midfield at the base and allow the other players, the attacking players, to just express themselves, enjoy themselves and get more goals. So when it comes to players that are actually on the market, Nemanja Matic is probably the best fit at the moment. The obvious problem with Nemanja Matic is that he's slightly out of our price range. I mean, Man United were apparently in for him earlier on in the window, but then apparently Chelsea threw a strop about Man United taking Lukaku off of them, so they don't want to sell to Man U anymore. But apparently the fee for him was being quoted as around 50-60 million pounds. And while he's a proven Premier League winner, he's got Champions League experience, and he basically fits that mould that I was talking about earlier. If Liverpool want to be signing Naby Keita and Virgil van Dijk, who are going to cost 70 million pounds each, then I don't think they're really going to have that kind of money available to spend on a slightly lower priority player in this window. So while I would like to see a defensive midfielder, I'd certainly love to see Liverpool sign one this summer transfer window. I don't think it's very likely that we're going to bring one in, and I think we'll probably have to wait until January, or more likely than that, next summer transfer window for Liverpool to sign an out-and-out defensive midfielder. But the window's going to be open for a lot longer after this, so a lot could change. So the verdict, I think that ideally Liverpool need 2 signings in midfield, preferably that box-to-box dynamo and that defensive midfielder, but I think the ones that are most likely are the ones that have been talked about an awful lot and mooted as top targets for Liverpool, are Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. And you know, I'd be fine with that. I'd be perfectly happy with Liverpool bringing in those 2 players. Naby Keita would be great. Oxlade-Chamberlain would be a fantastic squad player. He'd bring in depth. He'd be a bit of a utility player in midfield. So that would represent a fine window for me. I mean, I said in the last video about defenders, I said we needed 2 players, but in an ideal world, we could probably bring in another 2 defenders on top of that as well, simply to aid squad depth if we want to be fighting on 4 fronts next season. But I think in terms of midfielders, we're fairly set. I mean, that's probably why we're bringing Oxlade-Chamberlain, is to round things off and make sure we simply have that squad depth in midfield. And if we do bring in those 2 players, I think we should be absolutely fine in that area of the pitch for next season. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, why not give it a like? If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? I guess I'll put the button down there. This time, given this new layout, don't forget to check out the other videos as well over there, and subscribe to the Redmen TV if I can work out how to put a little button there for you to do that as well. Apart from that, don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter as well, and I'll see you in a bit. Bye for now.